Madam Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm at -10 for the start of my speech, I think, so I have to be a bit short. And that's difficult because you never make a speech on the request of Mirjam without getting instructions. And my instructions were, speak about the European social model, link it to Marga Klompé, and tell us how you can export the European social model worldwide. And this in 7 minutes. There we go. It was in 1789 that an economist and philosopher, Jeremy Bentham, argued that the government's role is to create the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people possible. If that's really the task of government, Marga Klompé has contributed to that. Contributed to that by taking away the want, the essential needs of persons. She was at the cradle of the launch of the Social Assistance Act. And that was the first time that the Dutch government recognized that certain events in life are not the individual's fault. And that therefore the individual should have a last resort offered by the state. And this attitude reflects what the European social model stands for. The 1965 Act was replaced only in 2004 by a new Social Assistance Act. And of course, a lot of updates happened throughout its 39-year life. But the key role always remained, and still is in fact the same in the 2004 Act, offering a last financial resort to those people that are in need of it. Like many other modern social security systems, the focus of the new Act is also very much on the integration and the reintegration and activation of people in the labor market. But its core is the same as in 1965. Safety nets should not be fishnets, only in, never out, but rather trampolines, making people jump higher. In one of my previous functions in the Netherlands as a Director General in the Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sport, I had to go back in depth into the draft text of Marga Klompé's Social Assistance Act. And what impressed me most in the draft text and in the minutes of the parliamentary debate was the very fundamental discussion about the equilibrium between own responsibility, responsibility towards others, particularly in the family, and towards society on the one hand, and the right of freedom of want on the other side. It seems that after decades of abundant concentration on the rights side, we are inescapably back to discuss the responsibility and the duty side again, not only because it's crisis, but also because we are confronted with very fundamental changes, globalization and demographic changes. What stands the European model for, the European social model? It combines economic growth with high standards of life in and outside the labor market. European social model aims to realize the full potential of people and of the labor market, whilst recognizing that some individuals outside of it may require extra support. European societies are characterized by opportunities and second chances. You are never lost after one go. The model binds society together, creating solidarity and a sense of belonging. Full employment is of course the ultimate goal, but the existing social model offers social protection when adverse circumstances hit an individual, and the underlying principle of social inclusion means that we support those who require support. Social partners have a joint responsibility of achieving sustainable employment, growth and innovation, therefore representing two sides of the same coin. Non-governmental organizations play an important role by awareness raising, mobilization, and providing services. We cannot and perhaps should not identify one single social system in Europe. Europe is also about respecting the diversity of individual member states in the structure of their systems, their individual circumstances and heritage, whilst having a common understanding of what adequate social protection and inclusive labor markets are. We share a vision. Even if there is divergence in how we realize this vision, this certainly does not undermine our European social model. Member states can and do learn from each other, and the European Commission is a facilitator of such learning, for example, through the social open method of coordination. Apart from the focus on individuals, there is now a growing interest, it has been mentioned before, on the issue of corporate social responsibility and social business. The Commission will shortly, later this year, publish a communication on these issues that are seen as important for a better functioning of the internal market and for the deployment of individuals. The model emerged after the Second World War and has since shown its success. But can it deal with all the challenges? And we have important ones. Let me just mention three. First, the demographic aging. Living longer as a success of modern society, and notably of increased social protection, but also a form of strain on public finances. We need to consider an adequate balance between time spent in work and time spent in retirement, for example. Our efforts should not stop there. We need also to consider more innovative ways of financing and structuring the well-earned retirement that is a key component of our European social model. In this respect, it is essential and a big challenge to maintain the balance in the interests of the different generations. Second challenge, individualization. Today's society is not yesterday's society. The start of the construction of the European welfare states unfolded itself in a situation that may be characterized as culturally homogeneous and socio-economically stable, if not static. Where in the 1950s institutions such as churches, political parties, trade unions had a very prominent, dominant role in society, with a constituency through which norms, values, and loyalty were simply hereditary, nowadays the focus is more on the individual. The European model has undergone numerous changes to adapt to the drastic changes in society. For instance, in its move from a focus on the traditional family, via the family in all its various forms, to the highly perfectioned and sophisticated system of individualization in fiscal and social security issues. But a system can only survive if it can continuously build on solidarity, an article that is not available always and everywhere, certainly not when individualism tends to become egocentrism. And the third and last challenge I would like to mention is that of migration. Here, I'm not in the first place thinking of the sometimes xenophobic discussions about unregulated migration. I would like to bring two specific issues in focus. First, labor mobility, and we talk about mobility when it concerns mobility within the European Union, making full use of the European single market. Until now, only 2.6% of the European labor force lives and works in another country than its country of origin, more than 50 years after the start of the European Union. That is not very impressive, and we will see that while there are more than 1 million vacancies in Europe nowadays, it seems to be very difficult to get the right person to the right job. Things to be done. The second one in this respect concerns labor migration, and we talk about that when it comes from third countries into the European Union. There are calculations saying that all in all in Europe we will need 2 million workers in health in 2025 that we cannot provide for from European labor force itself, even including mobility. So all the arrows point in the direction of the necessity of labor migration from third countries to Europe. But the issue is in some cases too hot to handle. European social model was developed during a time of reconstructions after the Second World War, trying to catch up with the United States. It was part of a clear goal, similar to that of many emerging markets today. The costs of having such a model in the race for competitiveness was far outweighed by the benefits of societal cohesion that it created, resulting in a productive environment, leading to increased investment and growth. The right social policies can be a productive factor when carried out in the proper way. Of course, there's a lot of interest, should I say a dream, from people all over the world, also to reach the status of freedom of want that we know in our societies. It's clear that that idea will remain a dream if there will be no economic growth, if there will not be good governance, in particular proper legislation, a redistributive tax system, the rule of law, and a ban on corruption. But the issue is on the agenda, as you just heard from Mr. Pinheiro. It is on the agenda of the G20. The social protection floor has been pushed very much by the French G20 presidency. And it's a bit paradoxical to come to the conclusion that even in countries where economic growth would encourage the start of a discussion and the putting in place of a social protection floor, there is some hesitation to do so. Because that is the argument, even in emerging economies, by investing in this, costs go up and one might lose its competitive advantage. So a lot of discussion has to take place on the international level, and it's clear that we cannot export the European social model immediately, if only because there is not one, but 27 European social models at the moment. But the issue is on the agenda and is there to stay, like on the European level and on the national levels. And where could I say this better than in the University of Tilburg, that wants to play a role in this, in the framework of the Marga Klompé Foundation, who is honoring Marga Klompé, who sets an example for this, and with Mirjam van Reisen, who will start officially today to really work on the issue on a scientific level. And I wish her all kinds of success. Thanks very much.